sometimes it's as simple as counting calories. There's no magic trick to weight loss. Just like with people, you have to look at what's going in versus what's coming out or going out. And so, I always start with a very thorough diet history. Where people sometimes forget to count calories is that chew treat. So if they're giving them a chew bone to keep them busy at night, that could add another 200 calories. If they're giving things like fish oils or some of the joint supports, those will add anywhere from 10 to 50 calories each. And so you need to count everything, not just what you're putting in the food bowl.
Hello and welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast brought to you by Weeth. I'm Jan Sokodolski. I'm here from Texas University, and I'm trying to bring you the latest insights and discussions on real topics of interest in the pet food science industry. So get ready to expand your knowledge. And today is my really great pleasure to welcome Dr. Lisa Weeth. Lisa, hi, we know each other for a long time. And Lisa is a clinical nutritionist that's one of her favorite topics is obesity. So today we're going to speak about obesity and especially what client owners can do, correct?
Yes.
Hi, Lisa. So what I like to do is actually that people, I like to let people introduce themselves. So, what was your career path, what you're doing now, but more importantly, did you start and how did you end up over your career, what you're doing now?
Happy. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jan, for having me on this podcast. I'm very excited to talk with you today. So I feel like every time I see you, it's at a conference and we're on our way someplace else. So it's nice to have dedicated time with you. My path is, I will say I had never intended to become a specialist when I went down the veterinary career path. I was going to be a general practitioner. So I graduated from UC Davis in 2002. Very quickly expanded our family. I was very, very pregnant at graduation. So I was one of those vet students and went into private just general practice dog and cat. And I did that for 2 years, but really felt the pull for nutrition. I helped with nutrition research as a vet student. I was involved with one of the pet food companies as a kind of the liaison at the school. So I had this kind of almost insider view of what the pet food industry was like and what the field of nutrition could do for pet care. And when I was in practice, I saw so many of my cases, so many of my patients that had a really strong nutritional component, whether it was urolithiasis or obesity management or enteropathies, it all came back to diet. And I just really wanted to know more. So I convinced my husband, who stayed my husband this whole time, that I needed to go back to school and do a residency in clinical nutrition, which I did at UC Davis as well. I finished that in 2007 and have been in specialty referral practice pretty much since then. Short stint where we lived overseas and I did more telemedicine and kind of communications and scientific writing. But then 2016 till today, I'm here in Los Angeles. So I'm currently at a practice called Metropolitan Animal Specialty Hospital in Los Angeles, and I am full-time nutrition specialist.
A longer, healthier lifespan for our pets. That is EW Nutrition's target. With immunoglobulins, that target is within reach. IGY are a young generation technology platform, an innovative solution that has been tried and tested over the last decades and can now yield tangible benefits. Immunoglobulins from egg yolk improve the animal's response to pathogens in the gut or in the mouth. They're easy to administer, they're perfectly safe, and they just work. Made with passion, proven with science.
So what is your daily kind of caseload and what kind of cases you usually see?
I mean, I receive appointments. So technically it could be Monday through Thursday, but I've had to limit because I've taken on a new resident. So I'm training a resident for the first time and we need to have some teaching, kind of more didactic teaching time. And so we're receiving appointments from 9 a.m. Monday through Wednesday. And our last appointment finishes up at 4:30. My appointments do run long. So my appointments are typically 30 minutes to an hour. So of that day, we're maybe seeing anywhere from 6 to 10 patients during that time. So it kind of varies day to day. The goal is to have him up and running so that in his second year, we can go back to 4-day-a-week cases. So it's jumping. I feel like it's jumping.
So you wanted to speak today about obesity. Why is this such a hot topic for yourself, right?
I mean, I feel like, so I don't actually see a lot of referred obesity cases. So for me, one of the questions I get from people who aren't as familiar with nutrition is like, oh, you must see a lot of overweight dogs and cats, and that must be the bulk of your business. And it actually isn't. I feel like there's so many more cases that are going into general practitioners that owners are trying to manage at home on their own. Like they notice their dog getting a little bit thicker around the waist and they're looking at what can they do. And so what I end up seeing are the cases that are a little bit more complicated. So I thought it would be a good topic for your audience to look at, when you're looking at a diet or you're looking at a patient, how can you modify and manage them, without having to get to the nutrition specialist.
So how do you approach a dog, like a patient like that? What is your kind of plans?
Yeah, so I usually start with, I feel like with nutrition, it's always the details. So you want to collect a really thorough diet history. Is this dog purely being overfed? So I've had cases where there's multiple feeders in the household, or elderly relatives or toddlers who are constantly like throwing food or slipping the dog a little extra. And so sometimes it's as simple as counting calories. There's no magic trick to weight loss. Just like with people, you have to look at what's going in versus what's coming out or going out. And so, I always start with a very thorough diet history. Where people sometimes forget to count calories is that chew treat. So if they're giving them a chew bone to keep them busy at night, that could add another 200 calories. If they're giving things like fish oils or some of the joint supports, those will add anywhere from 10 to 50 calories each. And so you need to count everything, not just what you're putting in the food bowl. And then once you have that, I always do a calculation. So energy calculations to look at, is this dog, again, being purely overfed? Is this cat being purely overfed? Or are they within the normal variation of a population? They just fall on the left-hand side of the bell curve. So they have a really low energy requirement. And yes, they're being overfed, but not intentionally.
So how do owners usually, what is your owner kind of compliance expectations?
So I will say by the time they come to the nutritionist, the compliance is pretty high. They've been frustrated. They've gone through it. They've tried other approaches and not been successful. And so compliance is good. I usually have owners, which is something that's a little bit foreign for the US pet owners, is I have people weigh their food. So how many grams of dry food, how many grams of canned food are you feeding? And because I feel like, especially for small dogs and cats, an extra 2 grams could add another 10 calories. And so you want to make sure that you're accounting for that. So I think compliance is high, but I also have owners follow up with me frequently. So I don't just send them home with a bag of food, say, here's your plan and good luck, see you in 6 months. I have them come back every month and we're checking weights. The other thing that I do with my patients, with dog patients, I should say, is I do what my version of morphometric measurements is. So I'll do just centimeter around their thorax, how many centimeters around their inguinal, and just do those comparisons. Like, is this dog really a tube? Am I getting 42 centimeters around their chest and 42 centimeters around their waist? And then can I use that to help give owners some other numbers to look at? As we're on our weight loss plan, maybe the scale hasn't changed 1 month to the next. Maybe they peed and pooped before the last weight check and they didn't this time. Something has happened. Their weights haven't changed. But I've had dogs that have lost a significant amount of their circumference between check-ins. So I kind of give two numbers for owners to look at.
So let me ask maybe a question back. Is many owners come to you, so they're really compliant. So what is the main reason, or what do you think is common reasons they come to you? They really seek advice.
Yeah, I will say, I live in LA, so sometimes it's health and wellness and the owners are really fit, and so they want to make sure their dog is really fit too. Oftentimes though, there's some sort of mobility issue. So it's the aging dog, the aging cat, and they don't have as much energy on a walk, or maybe they're having a hard time getting up and down off the sofa or the bed. And so they've looked at and they've been told that weight management can help improve mobility and just quality of life. So, and that's typically what I focus on. Weight it's not a cosmetic issue. It's a metabolic issue. It's a mechanical issue. And so we want to make sure that we're treating the whole patient.
Do you have the feeling that owners realize this pretty late in the game, right? So when really there's problems, when they realize that maybe the dog is a little bit too heavy?
I feel like it's the same, when it happens gradually, it's the same with us, a little bit here and there, from year to year, you may not notice the month to month change, but then you look back at a picture, or you have a dog where you've put them in their Christmas sweater for the first time in 12 months or 11 months, and it's a little bit tighter. It's a little bit snug on them. And so I feel like sometimes that weight gain can be a little bit insidious and slow and steady, and you don't notice the change. I know what my personal experience, like I had an experience before I was a veterinarian, before I even went to vet school, where we had a Labrador years ago who was a Labrador. She loved to eat. And my husband and I, or we're not married at the time, but we were living together and managing this dog, and we weren't really paying attention. And she went in for just routine, like health check vaccination. And I called the veterinarian afterwards to go over blood work, like to go over the whatever results. And he's like, the first thing he said to me when I answered the phone was, "Your dog is fat." And my first response was to like step back and like, why are you insulting my parentage? But then, kind of thinking about it, like we didn't realize that it had become a problem for her. And so we kind of had to make that concerted effort to really watch what we're feeding her and how many treats are going in. And she moved around a whole lot better once she got a little bit of weight off.
Many veterinarians, I read somewhat, don't want to talk about the animals are, the patients are obese, right? Because they don't want to kind of make a bad impression on the clients. How would you recommend veterinarians already in the annual checkups maybe approach this topic?
Yeah, I mean, so I will say that people do get uncomfortable with it, especially, if the owner has a weight problem. I mean, everybody knows where their weight is on the kind of ideal scale. I don't think anyone's not aware of themselves, or where, maybe not their pets. They may not recognize it in their pets. And so I keep it very objective. Your dog has gained, like when they were 2 years old, they were 25 kilos and it looked like they were at a pretty good body condition. And I've noticed the weight trending up every year. They're another 2 kilos and 2 kilos and 2 kilos. And I'm worried that this is going to affect their energy levels, how well they're going to be moving into their senior years. So we need to kind of get on top of this now. So I try to keep it very kind of clinical and objective. There's no judgment. And again, going back to those counting calories, I have usually the cases that come to see me are the dogs that are not being overfed. It's you should be 30 kilo Labrador who may be 40 kilos, and the owners are feeding what looks like an appropriate. They're following the package instructions. They're not giving a lot of extra treats. They're doing what they think they should be doing, but this dog is still over their ideal weight. And again, it goes back to that individual variation. I tell people that when I calculate calories, if I calculate 1,200 to 1,400 calories a day for your dog based on this activity level, individuals can vary up to 50% above or below that. So there's a huge range of normal within the population that may not meet the package guidelines. So part of the reason I put obesity management on this kind of as a topic to talk about is if you do have one of those dogs that's just an easy keeper. I tell owners that if you and your dog were roaming the plains, post-apocalyptic US, and you're trying to scavenge food, if you had a dog that could survive on 800 calories, whereas your neighbor's dog of the same weight needed 1,800, like your dog is going to survive. You're going to be able to find enough food for everybody. So they're very fit to an environment that just doesn't exist anymore. We don't have food scarcity. We don't have feast and famine times. And so your dog's genetics just haven't gotten the message yet. So your dog's metabolism is lower than the average. And so we need to feed them as an individual, not as the generic.
That brings us to the question. So how do you afterwards approach the weight loss program, right? I mean, can you just simply, obviously in some animals, it may be okay to reduce calories. In other ones, probably not as easy, right? So what is your approach there?
Yeah, so I look at, if I have a patient that's really being overfed, they should be eating 1,200 calories a day and the family's feeding them 1,500, then I think any diet will work. Over-the-counter diet, as long as it's complete and balanced, if you scale back to 1,200 calories, you'll be fine. Commercial pet foods are formulated to be complete and balanced, assuming the animal's eating like pretty close to like 80 to 90% of their intake from that food. So a little bit of overages in the nutrient content, so you can get away with maybe you can get away with 80% of package recommendations and still meet all of their essential nutrient needs. But if you have that dog that you're feeding you calculate 1,200 and you're feeding 1,200, but they are still 20% over their ideal, you need to scale them down to 800. Now we start to run into nutrient deficiencies. Most over-the-counter commercial foods for especially for dogs, the protein levels are pretty close to low end of minimum for commercial food. So if you start scaling them back, all of a sudden you're restricting protein and you're restricting calcium and you're restricting iodine and selenium. So two key trace minerals that are required for thyroid hormone function. So are you going to slow your metabolism even more if you just cut back that over-the-counter diet? One of the other ones that I saw that was pretty frequent in New Jersey and in California too is that veterinarians will recommend, well, just replace 25 or 30% of your dog's intake with a cooked vegetable. So it was like the green bean diet was what it was typically. The problem is, again, it goes back to you're cutting protein, you're cutting calcium, you're cutting vitamin D. All of the essentials that are in that fortified diet are now potentially deficient. And so are you now going to create problems that didn't exist because of those nutrition deficiencies?
So what is your approach then? Is it a new diet or is it the weight loss diets?
I'm a big fan of the therapeutic weight loss diets for active weight loss. And I do have some patients that if you have if you're eating closer to your resting energy requirement, so pretty minimal, no commercial over-the-counter diet is formulated for resting. They're formulated for your daily or your maintenance or metabolizable energy requirement, which is about 60% higher than that resting. So I always switch to the therapeutic weight loss diets during the active weight loss program and plan. That way, those diets will have twice as much protein as a standard over-the-counter diet. They'll have, twice as much trace minerals, macro minerals, all of those nutrients are coming in at the right amount. So we could potentially restrict this dog to 50% of what we expect it to need in terms of calories and still meet their requirements. I do have some patients that have such low energy requirements that I then feed that same weight loss diet as a maintenance diet. And so they just get their, they stay on the, whatever satiety support or, metabolic diet or OM, or pick your preferred one. I use them all interchangeably. It just depends on what the dog will eat. Do I need high fiber? Sometimes fiber helps make the dogs feel more full. A lot of my overweight, especially retrievers, like golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers, German Shepherd dogs, need more fiber in their diet. We know we're not talking about the microbiome, but we need to make sure the microbiome is happy and healthy. And so fiber is a big part of that. And I think it's an overlooked, underappreciated nutrient in the diet. And so let's feed them more fiber too. Keep everyone happy.
What's the fiber content typically of those weight loss diets? I thought they're much higher than...
They are. So it's hard because some companies only report crude fiber, which is only measuring a portion of the insoluble fiber content. Some companies will report total dietary fiber for the therapeutic diets. And so most of the kind of standard over-the-counter diets, their crude fiber levels are somewhere around like 5%, at max. Maybe some of the light diets or weight management over-the-counter diets, it may go up closer to like 8 as a crude fiber. Total dietary fiber is always higher. So some of the highest fiber of the weight loss diets will have a total dietary fiber close to 50. One of them has 110 grams per 1,000 calories. So they can be really high. So like 5 to 6 times higher than what's in a standard maintenance diet.
And also fiber is obviously important for gut microbiome motility, but also in this case, it kind of reduces digestibility, correct? Is that the right term?
Yeah, so it'll reduce the digestibility. Some of the companies report digestibility data, and on their standard like intestinal support diets, the digestibility of those foods can be 85, 90% sometimes. The digestibility of most of the higher fiber weight loss diets drops down to 60%. Oh, really? So it's a huge decrease. But again, we want these animals to feel full. Like I don't want the Labrador, counter surfing and helping themselves to the stick of butter that you happen to leave out, or stealing food off the, toddler's plate. We want to make sure that they feel full and they're comfortable with their reduce. The other nice thing that fiber does is it makes the owners feel like they're putting more food in their bowl. So they don't feel like they're starving. Like now we've got all this like extra bulk in the food itself. So it doesn't feel like you're depriving your dog.
And the stool consistency usually gets afterwards on those fiber diets?
Yeah, it's usually great. Like most owners are very happy with, their fecal scores or like on the Purina chart, it's like a 1 to 7 scale with 1 being too hard, 2 is perfect, 7 is liquid diarrhea. I would say the most common fecal score is a 2. Owners are really happy. because that's what owners look at. They look at, does my dog eat the food? Do I have a lot of messy poop to clean up, or is it really easy? What do their coats look like? Are they, energetic? They don't necessarily, they trust the diet to be balanced. They trust the nutrients to be okay, because they can't see the calcium or the vitamin D levels, but they can see poop quality. And that's a big factor I see so many, you probably do too. I see more poop pictures than I ever thought I would ever see in my life. It's a frequent part of I have emails of poop. It's great.
Poop is good. I think we're at a very different level for it. So what is the approach afterwards? What is your strategy? The speed of weight loss, what do you expect? And
yeah, so we want slow and steady weight loss. So we want them, I usually target, if they're on a therapeutic weight loss diet for a dog, between 1% to 2% of their body weight per week as a decrease. So slow and steady. I'm happy if it goes down 0.5% a week, but we're still making that, positive trend or negative trend, I guess. Slow and steady, because again, I want the owners to be compliant. I don't want the dog to become food aggressive or start begging and having some of the negative behaviors that may start the backslide into overfeeding. For cats, focus a lot on dogs, but for cats, I tend to go much more slowly, because I worry about cats not eating enough consistently. And I worry about, especially my overweight patients, if they stop eating, I worry about hepatic lipidosis. So my goal for cats, slow and steady, 0.5% to 1% at max per week. And we're just doing those frequent rechecks. So we come in every 4 to 6 weeks. I have an estimate of, I tell the owner this is our target. I calculate out for them. If they lose 1% per week, this is how much they should lose. The other nice thing about thinking about it in terms of percentage of overweight is when we do our body condition scores. So if I have a body condition score of a 7 out of 9, with 5 being ideal, and that's a scale that's been validated by the Purina company using DEXA scans. And so the DEXA scan correlation with body condition score is every point on that scale is about a 10 to 15% difference in body weight. So I can look at that patient that's a 7 out of 9. I can tell the owner that your dog needs to lose 20% of its body weight. I can back calculate to see, okay, if they're, this amount now, this is what our goal weight should be. And if they're 20% overweight, I can tell them it's going to take 10 to 20 weeks for your dog to lose weight. It's not a quick fix. If they're a 9 out of 9 and they're 40% overweight plus, I tell them it's going to could take us over a year. So it's not a marathon. I don't want rapid weight loss because I don't want muscle loss. If we lose weight too quickly, we start to metabolize our lean body mass. I don't want that. So slow and steady.
So what is your experience? Obviously, you're a little bit biased, or you have a different population of owners that you see, but from all the literature, what is the success rate? How many owners are truly going to follow through?
Yeah, I would say it's harder in a general practice because it's, your weight loss cases can be frustrating, and it does take a lot of hand holding. So I think my experience in general practice and in my specialty practices, I have a very high success rate, over 90%, like almost 100% of my patients will lose weight, cats and dogs. But I also have that follow up with them. And I spend the time at the beginning of the appointment to talk with them about why is this important for your individual animal. And I will say, I don't gauge success as we're down to an ideal body weight. So if I have a patient that's a 9 out of 9 and having mobility issues, and we can get them down to a 7 out of 9, still 20% over ideal, but they've lost quite a bit and they're moving around better. And the owner says, you know what, I'm happy with this. I can't do this for another, let's just maintain. I'm happy with maintenance. Even if they're overweight, if they're improved from where we started and are moving around better. So I always tell owners we focus on quality of life. We want this animal to feel good. We want that dog and cat to feel good for as long as possible. But I'm not the one who's implementing it at home, so they need to be on board too.
What would be from your experiences, quick tips, not quick tips, but I think useful tips for a general practitioner, number one? And then also secondly, if you would wish there would be a special diet or something, that it would be available that would make this whole journey much easier.
I think the therapeutic diets we have work really well when they're used. And so I think sometimes the hard sell from a general practice standpoint is convincing that owner they need to buy the prescription diet. They need to spend a little bit more money. I tell owners it's our weight loss plan is not forever. It's 6 months, maybe a year at the most. And then we can find a maintenance diet that works. So you're not going to be committed to buying this therapeutic diet unless you are one of those exceptions where you just have your dog has such a low energy requirement that we need to make sure they're getting a balanced diet. Quick tips, I would say, diet history is really important to know where are we starting. If you're in a really busy practice, you don't have the support staff who can sit there and kind of walk through the owner with everything. You can absolutely start with just calculations. So typically I have people start with calculating resting energy requirement. And I start with current weight, not ideal weight. So we start with current weight, resting energy requirement, and we're going to feed that. And then we're going to come back in a month and see, have we gained weight? Have we lost weight? Have we lost weight? So if they don't have time for the diet history or the owners just don't know, like so many people in the household, we just don't know what the dog's eating. Start with resting energy for current weight. If the dog is losing weight at that, keep doing what you're doing. 1% to 2% weight. So make sure they're not losing weight too quickly. If they need to, if we hit a point where they plateau, then I jump them down to resting energy for ideal weight. So if the dog's 35 kilos versus should be 25 kilos, I don't typically start them at the 25 kilo mark, because for some dogs, that's too much of a restriction, and then compliance becomes a problem. So I look at it, it's slow and steady. We're going to step by step them down and make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. I will say the other tip is build in treats. Owners, if that was a part of their lifestyle and a part of their relationship with the dog at the beginning or the cat at the beginning, if you tell them you're on a strict diet, absolutely no treats, the owner's going to cheat. Like you're setting them up for failure. Like the dog, if their routine is every night before bed, I get my chew treat. Well, we just need to build that in. So, give them room for, training rewards for dental chews, like whatever we can within reason. Maybe we find a lower calorie dental chew that they like to eat, or maybe we don't do it every day. We do it every other day. So I feel like set yourself up for success. And just know that it's going to be a process. It's not a one and done. It's not like you give the antibiotic and the UTI is cleared. And I also warn owners that, this may be lifelong. If your dog is prone to gaining weight, we're going to have to just keep an eye on where they are.
It's time for our famous three. For more than 20 years, BioOrigin manufactures high-quality yeast-based ingredients through a sustainable biotechnological process, guaranteeing full traceability from the crop to the bowl. Through specialization in the fermentation process, BioOrigin brings the right solution for specific nutritional, palatability, and health appeals, such as gut health, immune system, skin health, weight control, and more. BioOrigin's products are natural origin, non-GMO, and certified sustainable by Bonsucro. BioOrigin is your partner for high-quality, yeast-based ingredients to add value to pet foods worldwide. Learn more at bioorigin.net.
I guess that could be good for pet foods industry, like a low-calorie treats, correct?
Low-calorie dental chews. I mean, some of those dental chews can be 100 to 200 calories each. And so having an option that is for those dogs that need to have that chew enrichment. I mean, chewing is like a pastime. It's a hobby for some dogs. They need to have it in there. Owners need to have it in there to save their furnitures and their walls. So, can we have lower calorie versions? And then I would say from a standard, pet food industry, some of the light diets are relatively low in protein. So can we look at, is there a way to have a balance for, can we help address those patients that are on the, that left-hand side of the energy bell curve where we're providing them a diet that they don't necessarily have to go get through their veterinarian, but is still meeting all of their metabolic needs.
Let me ask you a final question, because we're almost at the end of our time.
I could talk about diet forever.
I know, that's great. We have to come. You can come back. Weight loss medications. It's a big buzz now in human medicine. Now it's this miracle, right? I think they seem to really work well, right? So people come ask you about those? What is the current state obesity management in animals?
Yeah, so I think that's probably something that I wouldn't be surprised if there are some drug companies working on a pet version. There have been medications in the past. I don't know if anyone in the audience remembers Slentrol for dogs. It was like it was because it was right after I finished my residency that came out, so it's probably like 2008 to 2010, and it was an appetite suppressant, and so it was the same kind of very similar idea as the current, Ozempics and things like that for people, except for it was just an oral medication that suppressed appetite in dogs. The problem is it didn't treat the people. And so it only lasted on the market for 2, maybe 3 years. It was effective at reducing and suppressing appetite in dogs, but I had more owners like that when they gave the Slentrol and their dog didn't want to eat, they panicked and said there's something wrong with my dog, and they would find a tastier treat to offer him. So they're counteracting the medication. And dogs will, if the food is tasty enough, like they'll eat it, even if they're not hungry. You put a piece of chicken in their face, they will eat it most likely. So the problem with medications in dogs is it doesn't treat the people, and it's really the owner. It's obesity is really it's at its core, it's a husbandry issue. So it's a management issue, and it's sometimes just not that the owner is intending to do it. Sometimes they do have that really, easy keeper, low energy requirement dog, and so it's just a matter of helping them recognize that.
Maybe you give me advice for my own dog. So we have a dog. She's a beautiful 2-year-old dog. And whenever she hears the sound of food in the bowl, you know what she does? She runs away. She runs outside because that's for her the sign that all the other dogs are going to be fed and then come outside to play with her.
Oh, so she's a play focus. What kind of dog do you have?
It's like a mix of pit bull, Newfoundland, everything. It's a really nice dog. But she doesn't want to eat, right? And almost she eats maybe like once a day, maybe every 2 days. But yet in our own mentality, we worry about it and we actually try to force her to eat. And I think that's what you can say. I think it's this psychology, right?
Yeah.
But often the dog probably knows what is best for the dog, and we kind of try to overstimulate a little bit.
Yeah, and I feel like there are some like people who are like that. I'd rather, people who'd rather play a sport than come inside and have a snack. And so I think there's some dogs that are very kind of wired for activity, and that's where that's their enjoyment in life. So I'd say the challenge with your dog is if they're only eating once a day, are they getting enough calories to maintain their weight? Are they getting enough balanced nutrients to make sure that all of the metabolic machinery that they're walking around with is working efficiently and well?
Now you make me worried.
Yeah. So I say like that, and to me, like that's part of the reason I am talking about obesity is I have some of my patients that come to me who are being fed an amount of calories to maintain an ideal body weight, but it's so different than the average dog. It's so much smaller than the average dog that I've seen vitamin B12 deficiencies, zinc deficiencies, B vitamins not coming at the right amounts, causing, skin signs. There's a lot of nutritionally related diseases that end up walking into a vet clinic that don't get recognized as a nutritionally related disease because the assumption is the diet's balanced. And the diet may be balanced, but if it's not being fed at the right amount, are we, again, creating problems for that individual? So kind of just to raise awareness in the background that if your dog doesn't need as much food, you might want to think about one of these kind of more fortified therapeutic diets for them.
Great. So thank you so much, Lisa. We are at the end of our episodes.
Yeah, happy.
So I hope you're going to come back next time. We can talk more about obesity or other very, very insightful, I think, clinical, information. Yeah.
Happy to come back anytime.
So thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. That concludes another episode of the Pet Food Science Podcast, presented by Weeth. Thank you for joining us today. Please leave us a feedback, a review, also sign up so we are always informed about new upcoming episodes. So until next time, my name is Jan Sokolski. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
And thank you from the Pet Food Science Podcast. Bye-bye.